Narrated by Aisha. Whenever the Prophet peace be upon him took a bath after janaba, he started by washing his hands and then performed ablution like that for the prayer. After that he would put his fingers in water and move the roots of his hair with them, and then pour 3 handfuls of water over his head, and then pour water all over his body. Narrated by Maimuna. The wife of the Prophet, Allah's Messenger peace be upon him, performed ablution like that for the prayer but did not wash his feet. He washed off the discharge from his private parts and then poured water over his body. He withdrew his feet from that place, the place where he took the bath, and then washed them. And that was his way of taking the bath of janaba. Narrated by Aisha. The Prophet peace be upon him and I used to take a bath from a single pot called farak. Narrated by Abu Salama. Aisha's brother and I went to Aisha and he asked her about the bath of the Prophet. She brought a pot containing about a sa of water and took a bath and poured it over her head, and at that time there was a screen between her and us. Narrated by Abu Jafar. While I and my father were with Jabir bin Abdullah, some people asked him about taking a bath. He replied, "A sa of water is sufficient for you." A man said, "A sa is not sufficient for me." Jabir said, "A sa was sufficient for one who had more hair than you and was better than you," meaning the Prophet. And then Jabir put on his garment and led the prayer. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet peace be upon him and Maimuna used to take a bath from a single pot. Narrated by Jubair bin Mut'im. Allah's Messenger peace be upon him said, "As for me, I pour water 3 times on my head." And he pointed with both his hands. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. The Prophet peace be upon him used to pour water 3 times on his head. Narrated by Abu Jafar. Jabir bin Abdullah said to me, "Your cousin, Hassan bin Muhammad bin al-Hanafiyyah, came to me and asked about the bath of janaba." I replied, "The Prophet peace be upon him uses to take 3 handfuls of water, pour them on his head and then pour more water over his body." Al-Hassan said to me, "I am a hairy man." I replied, "The Prophet peace be upon him had more hair than you." Narrated by Maimuna. I placed water for the bath of the Prophet. He washed his hands twice or thrice and then poured water on his left hand and washed his private parts. He rubbed his hands over the earth and cleaned them, rinsed his mouth, washed his nose by putting water in it and blowing it out, washed his face and both forearms and then poured water over his body. Then he withdrew from that place and washed his feet. Narrated by Aisha. Whenever the Prophet peace be upon him took the bath of janaba, sexual relation or wet dream, he asked for the hilab or some other scent. He used to take it in his hand, rub it first over the right side of his head and then over the left and then rub the middle of his head with both hands. Narrated by Maimuna. I placed water for the bath of the Prophet peace be upon him and he poured water with his right hand on his left and washed them. Then he washed his private parts and rubbed his hands on the ground, washed them with water, rinsed his mouth and washed his nose by putting water in it and blowing it out, washed his face and poured water on his head. He withdrew from that place and washed his feet. A piece of cloth, towel, was given to him but he did not use it. Narrated by Maimuna. The Prophet peace be upon him took the bath of janaba, sexual relation or wet dream. He first cleaned his private parts with his hand, and then rubbed it, that hand, on the wall, earth, and washed it. Then he performed ablution like that for the prayer, and after the bath he washed his feet. Narrated by Aisha. The Prophet peace be upon him and I used to take a bath from a single pot of water, and our hands used to go in the pot after each other in turn. Narrated by Aisha. Whenever Allah's Messenger peace be upon him took a bath of janaba, he washed his hands first. Narrated by Aisha. The Prophet peace be upon him and I used to take a bath from a single pot of water after janaba. Narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet peace be upon him and one of his wives used to take a bath from a single pot of water. Shuba added to Anas' statement after the janaba. Narrated by Ma'imuna. I placed water for the bath of Allah's Messenger peace be upon him, and he poured water over his hands, and washed them twice or thrice, then he poured water with his right hand over his left, and washed his private parts, with his left hand. He rubbed his hand over the earth and rinsed his mouth, and washed his nose by putting water in it and blowing it out. After that he washed his face, both forearms and head thrice, and then poured water over his body. He withdrew from that place and washed his feet. Narrated by Ma'imuna bint al-Harith. I placed water for the bath of Allah's Messenger peace be upon him and put a screen. He poured water over his hands, and washed them once or twice. The sub-narrator added that he did not remember if she had said thrice or not. Then he poured water with his right hand over his left one, and washed his private parts. He rubbed his hand over the earth or the wall and washed it. He rinsed his mouth, and washed his nose by putting water in it and blowing it out. He washed his face, forearms, and head. He poured water over his body and then withdrew from that place and washed his feet. I presented him a piece of cloth, towel, and he pointed with his hand, that he does not want it, and did not take it. Narrated by Muhammad bin al-Muntathir. On the authority of his father that he had asked Aisha, about the hadith of Ibn Umar. She said, May Allah be merciful to Abu Abdurrahman. I used to put scent on Allah's Messenger peace be upon him and he used to go round his wives, and in the morning he assumed the ihram, and the fragrance of scent was still coming out from his body. Narrated by Qatada. Anas bin Malik said, the Prophet peace be upon him used to visit all his wives in a round, during the day and night and they were 11 in number. I asked Anas, had the Prophet peace be upon him the strength for it? Anas replied, we used to say that the Prophet peace be upon him was given the strength of 30 men, and said on the authority of Qatada that Anas had told him about 9 wives only, not 11. Narrated by Ali. I used to get emotional urethral discharge frequently. Being the son-in-law of the Prophet peace be upon him, I requested a man to ask him about it. So the man asked the Prophet peace be upon him about it. The Prophet peace be upon him replied, perform ablution after washing your organ, penis. Narrated by Muhammad bin al-Muntathir. On the authority of his father that he had asked Aisha about the saying of Ibn Umar, he did not like to be a murim while the smell of scent was still coming from his body. Aisha said, I scented Allah's Messenger peace be upon him and he went round, had sexual intercourse with all his wives, and in the morning he was murim, after taking a bath. Narrated by Aisha. It is as if I am just looking at the glitter of scent in the parting of the Prophet's head hair while he was a murim. Narrated by Hisham bin Urwa. On the authority of his father, Aisha said, whenever Allah's Messenger peace be upon him took the bath of janaba, he cleaned his hands and performed ablution like that for prayer, and then took a bath and rubbed his hair, till he felt that the whole skin of the head had become wet, then he would pour water thrice and wash the rest of the body. Aisha further said, I and Allah's Messenger peace be upon him used to take a bath from a single water container, from which we took water simultaneously. Narrated by Ma'imuna. Water was placed for the ablution of Allah's Messenger peace be upon him after janaba. He poured water with his right hand over his left twice or thrice, and then washed his private parts and rubbed his hand on the earth or on a wall twice or thrice and then rinsed his mouth, washed his nose by putting water in it and then blowing it out and then washed his face and forearms and poured water over his head and washed his body. Then he shifted from that place and washed his feet. I brought a piece of cloth, but he did not take it and removed the traces of water from his body with his hand. Narrated by Abu Huraira. Once the call, Iqama, for the prayer was announced and the rows were straightened. Allah's Messenger peace be upon him came out, and when he stood up at his musalla, he remembered that he was junub. Then he ordered us to stay at our places and went to take a bath and then returned with water dropping from his head. He said, Allahu Akbar, and we all offered the prayer with him. Narrated by Ma'imuna. I placed water for the bath of the Prophet peace be upon him and screened him with a garment. He poured water over his hands and washed them. After that he poured water with his right hand over his left and washed his private parts, rubbed his hands with earth and washed them, rinsed his mouth, washed his nose by putting water in it and then blowing it out, and then washed his face and forearms. He poured water over his head and body. He then shifted from that place and washed his feet. I gave him a piece of cloth but he did not take it and came out removing the water from his body with both his hands. Narrated by Aisha. Whenever any one of us was junub, she poured water over her head thrice with both her hands and then rubbed the right side of her head with one hand, and rubbed the left side of the head with the other hand. Narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet peace be upon him said, the people of Bani Israel used to take bath naked all together looking at each other. The Prophet peace be upon him Moses used to take a bath alone. They said, by Allah, nothing prevents Moses from taking a bath with us except that he has a scrotal hernia. So once Moses went out to take a bath and put his clothes over a stone, and then that stone ran away with his clothes. Moses followed that stone saying, my clothes, O stone! My clothes, O stone! Till the people of Bani Israel saw him and said, by Allah, Moses has got no defect in his body. Moses took his clothes and began to beat the stone. Abu Huraira added, by Allah, there are still 6 or 7 marks present on the stone from that excessive beating. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet peace be upon him said, when the Prophet peace be upon him Ayub, was taking a bath naked, golden locusts began to fall on him. Job started collecting them in his clothes. His Lord addressed him, O Job! Haven't I given you enough so that you are not in need of them? Job replied, yes. By your honor, power. But I cannot dispense with your blessings. Narrated by Hani bint Abi Talib. I went to Allah's Messenger peace be upon him in the year of the conquest of Mecca, and found him taking a bath while Fatima was screening him. The Prophet peace be upon him asked, who is it? I replied, I am Hani. Narrated by Ma'imuna. I screened the Prophet peace be upon him while he was taking a bath of janaba. He washed his hands, poured water from his right hand over his left, and washed his private parts. Then he rubbed his hand over a wall or the earth, and performed ablution similar to that for the prayer but did not wash his feet. Then he poured water over his body, shifted from that place, and washed his feet. Narrated by Salama. The mother of the believers, Sulaim, the wife of Abu Talha, came to Allah's Messenger peace be upon him and said, O Allah's Messenger peace be upon him! Verily Allah is not shy of telling you the truth. Is it necessary for a woman to take a bath after she has a wet dream, nocturnal sexual discharge? Allah's Messenger peace be upon him replied, yes, if she notices a discharge. Narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet peace be upon him came across me in one of the streets of Medina, and at that time I was junub. So I slipped away from him and went to take a bath. On my return the Prophet peace be upon him said, "O Abu Huraira, where have you been?" I replied, "I was junub, so I disliked to sit in your company." The Prophet peace be upon him said, "Subhanallah, a believer never becomes impure." Narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet peace be upon him used to visit all his wives in one night, and he had 9 wives at that time. Narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger peace be upon him came across me and I was junub. He took my hand and I went along with him till he sat down. I slipped away, went home and took a bath. When I came back, he was still sitting there. He then said to me, "O Abu Huraira, where have you been?" I told him about it. The Prophet peace be upon him said, "Subhanallah, O Abu Huraira, a believer never becomes impure." Narrated by Abu Salama. I asked Aisha, did the Prophet peace be upon him used to sleep while he was junub? She replied, yes, but he used to perform ablution before going to bed. Narrated by Umar bin al-Khattab. I asked Allah's Messenger peace be upon him, can any one of us sleep while he is junub? He replied, yes, if he performs ablution, he can sleep while he is junub. Narrated by Aisha. Whenever the Prophet peace be upon him intended to sleep while he was junub, he used to wash his private parts and perform ablution like that for the prayer. Narrated by Abdullah. Umar asked the Prophet peace be upon him, can any one of us sleep while he is junub? He replied, yes, if he performs ablution. Narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. Umar bin al-Khattab told Allah's Messenger peace be upon him, I became junub at night. Allah's Messenger peace be upon him replied, perform ablution after washing your private parts and then sleep. Narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet peace be upon him said, when a man sits in between the 4 parts of a woman and did the sexual intercourse with her, bath becomes compulsory. Narrated by Zayd bin Khalid al-Juhani. I asked Uthman bin Affan about a man who engaged in the sexual intercourse with his wife but did not discharge. Uthman replied, he should perform ablution like that for the prayer after washing his private parts. Uthman added, I heard that from Allah's Messenger peace be upon him. I asked Ali bin Abi Talib, Az Zubair bin al-Awwam, Talha bin Ubaydullah and Ubay bin Ka'b, and they gave the same reply. Abu Ayyub said that he had heard that from Allah's Messenger peace be upon him, this order was cancelled later on, so one has to take a bath. Narrated by Ubay bin Ka'b. I asked Allah's Messenger peace be upon him about a man who engages in sexual intercourse with his wife but does not discharge. He replied, he should wash the parts which comes in contact with the private parts of the woman, perform ablution, and then pray. Abu Abdullah said, taking a bath is safer and is the last order.